Most movies are preoccupied enough with telling a good story and winning the audience over that they don't really have the time or interest to get you thinking about other films, at least not explicitly. But far beyond mere subtle references and nods to other movies, the following 10 films basically gave enthusiastic, prolonged endorsements which basically compelled you to look them up for yourself. And seeing as how we're in the business of telling you to go watch more movies, well, that seemed like a perfect excuse to do more of that. So get your Letterboxd watch list at the ready. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture, and here are 10 movies that made you watch other movies. Number 10. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Ratatouille. You shouldn't need any excuse whatsoever to watch Pixar's delightful animated classic Ratatouille, which for the record is my favorite Pixar movie, proving once again that 2007 was a beautiful year for cinema, but Everything Everywhere All at Once just went ahead and gave you another excuse anyway. Protagonist Evelyn, played by an Oscar-winning Michelle Yeoh, is initially heard misremembering the title and premise of Ratatouille, calling it Raccoon and claiming that it's about a raccoon rather than a rat, which sits on a bad chef's head and helps him cook good. Naturally, this leaves Evelyn's daughter Joy, played by Stephanie Sue, mildly annoyed to say the least. The hilarious payoff to this later, however, is that one of the parallel universes featured in the film indeed includes a teppanyaki chef, Chad, played by Harry Shum Jr., with a raccoon on top of his head, helping him to cook. And better yet, Evelyn even later helps rescue Ratatouille from animal control, because why the hell not? Even if you've seen Ratatouille many times before, this was a welcome nudge to revisit it once again. And if you'd somehow got to 2022 without seeing it, well, this was a perfectly unhinged invitation, to say the least. Number 9. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Phantoms. Pretty much the only reason that anyone still talks about 1998 sci-fi horror film Phantoms, which was both a critical and commercial bust upon release, is that it was so memorably referenced in Kevin Smith's stoner masterpiece, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. In an early scene of the movie, Holden McNeil, played by Ben Affleck, is talking to Jay and Silent Bob, Jason Mewes and Smith respectively, about casting for the Blunt Man and Chronic movie, and in a hilariously wink-wink moment, suggests that Miramax will probably cast Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Holden adds that he wasn't a fan of Good Will Hunting, but that, quote, Affleck was the bomb in Phantoms, before Jay emphatically agrees, with Phantoms like a mofo. Later in the film, when Jay encounters the real Ben Affleck, he even shouts about Affleck being the bomb in Phantoms, in turn solidifying the film's indelible place in stoner cinema forevermore. Number 8. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Paddington II. One of the most memorable gags in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent sees Playboy Javi, played by Pedro Pascal, reveal that his third favorite movie of all time is Paddington II, much to Nicolas Cage's incredulity. Javi says, quote, I cried through the entire thing. It made me want to be a better man. And while Cage is skeptical, we then smash cut to him sobbing while watching the film and exclaiming, Paddington II is incredible. Oh, anyway, it's safe to say that a legion of Nick Cage fans who likely wouldn't have bothered with Paddington II in the first place couldn't help but give it a go after watching this, even if only to see if the family comedy's effusive praise was genuine or not. Which, for all those Paddington II lovers out there will know, it clearly was. Better yet, both Pascal and Cage themselves are fans of the film. Number 7. Wayne's World 2. Thelma and Louise. Just as the first Wayne's World allowed audiences to savor multiple alternate endings before setting on the quote-unquote mega happy ending, so too did the sequel. When it's looking like Wayne's music festival Waynestock is gonna be a disaster, both he and Garth, played by Mike Myers and Dana Carvey respectively, decide to make the best of it and reenact the ending of Thelma and Louise, which was released 2 years prior. And so, Wayne and Garth don get-ups to vaguely resemble Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis respectively, before they drive a convertible version of the Mirthmobile off the edge of the Grand Canyon. Thankfully, this ending doesn't stick, and the duo finally decide to do a standard happy ending in which Wayne's stock is a success, and Wayne gets back with Cassandra, played by Tia Carrere. All the same, it's such a bonkers, no-context parody of Thelma and Louise that you're basically duty-bound to go watch that movie if you haven't already, even if it ultimately spoils the ending. Number 6. Swordfish, Dog Day Afternoon. It's always a gamble for a film to reference a much, much better movie, and that's what 2001's tech thriller Swordfish ended up doing in its opening moments. The movie kicks off with a verbose monologue from villain Gabriel Scheer, played by John Travolta, in which he criticizes Hollywood for a lack of realism before bringing up Sidney Lumet's classic 1975 crime drama, Dog Day Afternoon. Gabriel showers praise upon every aspect of the film, from Al Pacino's central performance to Lumet's directing and all the technical achievements, though argues that it didn't take its premise far enough or, quote, push the envelope, as he puts it. Starting this guilty pleasure movie with a glowing review of a vastly superior one is honestly pretty bold, and immediately points out you could be watching something else and something much better. So if you started watching Swordfish immediately, turn it off, put on Dog Day Afternoon, and have a great time basking in Al Pacino and John Cazale's glory, because those two dudes are amazing. Number 5. High Fidelity, Evil Dead 2. Classic rom-com High Fidelity sees protagonist Rob, played by John Cusack, anguish over something his ex Laura said about her new relationship with Ian/Ray. Quote, "I haven't slept with him yet." Rob debates the precise meaning of the word yet in this context with his employee Barry, played by Jack Black, swapping the phrase to instead say, quote, "I haven't seen Evil Dead 2 yet." Rob asks Barry whether this would likely imply that he was going to see Evil Dead 2, causing a thoroughly confused Barry to point out to an exasperated Rob that he already has seen Evil Dead 2. Barry gives the film enough quick praise during this brief scene that it might have encouraged a few rom-com fans to take a peek, even if Barry's dialogue about the movie actually sounds more like he's describing the third installment, Army of Darkness. Hey-ho, can't fault a film for giving Sam Raimi his flowers. Love you, Sam, you big, lovable, cool movie guy, you. Number 4. American Beauty, Reanimator. Best Picture winner American Beauty offers up a most unexpected nod to a classic body horror film of all things, Stuart Gordon's legendary 1985 romp, Reanimator, led by Jeffrey Combs. When protagonist Lester Burnham is smoking a joint with his neighbor Ricky Fitz, Lester asks, quote, "Did you ever see that movie where the body is walking around, carrying its own head, and then the head goes down on that babe?" Ricky quickly identifies the film as Reanimator, and though the movie swiftly moves on from the subject, the sheer craziness of Lester's one-sentence description surely left many scrambling to see if Reanimator was indeed a real film. And oh boy, that it certainly is, and how grateful we all are. Though a think piece published shortly after American Beauty's release questioned whether it would renew interest in Reanimator at rental stores around the globe, giving it a surprise nod in the year's most featured film was a guaranteed way to get more eyes on it. Number 3. Deadpool 2, Yentel. Though the Deadpool franchise is rife with finger-on-the-pulse pop culture references, perhaps the single most unexpected and weirdly specific in the entire trilogy is Wade's rant about Barbra Streisand's Oscar-winning 1983 drama Yentel in Deadpool 2. Midway through the movie, Wade, played by Ryan Reynolds, makes a crack about how Frozen's hit song, Do You Wanna Build a Snowman, sounds extremely similar to Yentel's Oscar-nominated track, Papa, Can You Hear Me? And while he's right, it's such a bizarre comment to make in the middle of a superhero movie that, of course, it had to be Ryan Reynolds who made the discovery himself. In explaining the gag, he said that, quote, "I'd watched Yentel on Turner Classic Movies a couple of weeks before, and I've watched Frozen 700 times with my daughter. Which is weird because Frozen is my favorite movie and Yentel is hers. But I'd noticed that the song, Do You Want to Build a Snowman, and Yentel's Papa Can You Hear Me, sound suspiciously alike. Some poor, hard-working songwriter's gonna go, what? I didn't mean it. I know. All the same, this was likely the first time that many of the tens of millions of people who watched Deadpool 2 had ever heard of Yentel, and it's fair to say that a decent handful of them then went and checked it out for themselves. Number 2. Hot Fuzz, Point Break, and Bad Boys 2. Though Point Break and Bad Boys 2 are certainly memorable movies in their own right, they got a nifty boost when Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz was released in 2007. Police Constable Danny Butterman, played by Nick Frost, is a huge fan of buddy cop movies and is left aghast that his new partner, Nicholas Angel, Simon Pegg, hasn't seen any of the classics, including the aforementioned pair. And so Danny makes Nicholas have a movie night with him where they watch both, celebrating their most iconic scenes in the process. Namely, Point Break's iconic firing into the air moment, which is replicated itself later in the movie. If you come away from Hot Fuzz without a burning desire to watch Point Break and Bad Boys 2, preferably as a double feature, then you must have fallen asleep. Wright's film may be a parody of American buddy cop fare, but it clearly has nothing but a totally genuine love for the genre, and these two offerings in particular. And number 1. Office Space, Superman 3. Cult classic comedy Office Space revolves around a trio of downtrodden office workers who, facing redundancy at their soulless jobs, decide to rip their company off by taking fractions of remainder cents from transactions and funneling them into a bank account. The scheme's mastermind is office drone Michael Bolton, played by David Herman, and when his co-worker Pete, played by Ron Livingston, mentions that it all sounds very familiar, Michael hilariously explains that he borrowed the idea from Superman 3, calling the ploy, quote, pretty brilliant. And like that, many who never would have given Superman 3 a second look, especially with how poorly reviewed it was when compared to its predecessors, couldn't help themselves but give it a shot. It's still a terrible, bad movie, but it's nevertheless fun to see where Office Space's zany heist plot had its origins.